Coming up on UGTV, Standing Committees of the Unified Government of Wyandotte County, Kansas City, Kansas. We begin with the meeting of the Public Works and Safety Standing Committee. This will be followed by the Administration and Human Services Standing Committee.
Testing.
It works.
You are testy.
Okay, good evening. I'm going to call to order the Public Works and Safety Standing Committee, and we welcome everyone to the meeting. Public comment is welcome, and if you would like to speak on any of our items, you may do so when that item's up for discussion. You would have up to 3 minutes, and we would ask you to come forward to the podium and speak directly into the microphone. And roll call. Would the clerk call the roll, please?
Roll call. Groneman. Philbrook.
Here.
Markley.
Here.
Kane. Here. Johnson.
Here.
Bynum.
Here. And the minutes are approved. Excuse me, I'm way ahead of myself. Thank you.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
I'll second.
Oh, now we have a motion and a second to approve minutes from our April 23rd meeting. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And now the minutes are approved. I want to update the agenda briefly. We are pulling and tabling item 4 on tonight's agenda, so there will not be an item 4. First order of business is the resolution regarding Pump Station 61. And it looks like, Brent, I may have to call on you for this item. Unless Mr. Waters is here and I just didn't see. Okay.
Okay, this is to get the process started for talking about easements and acquisitions and a condemnation if need be for the sewer project.
Move to approve.
Second.
Can I ask that you just say where it is and stuff for the public out there so they know what you're talking about?
This is located at 123rd Street North along and between, it's Donahue, 123rd to 123rd Terrace.
Thank you.
All right, we have a motion and a second on this item.
Wingfoot Drive.
Roll call, please.
Roll call, Philbrook,
Aye.
Markley,
Aye.
Kane, Johnson.
Aye.
Bynum.
Aye. And that motion carries. Next item is a resolution regarding Hutton Road sanitary sewer main extension. I believe it couples with the first item.
Second.
Have a motion and a second on that. Could I have roll call on that?
Roll call, Philbrook,
Aye.
Markley,
Aye.
Kane, Johnson.
Aye.
Bynum.
Aye. And that motion carries. We have a third item is the build-out update of our fiber network. We have Mr. Ellenhouse here to give us that. And we also have a handout here and a presentation. Mr. House.
All right, good evening, members, and come before you this evening to give an update on the progress on the build-out of the fiber network. We last came before standing committee in December of 2017, so this is about a 6-month update. We've got a lot of progress in that time, and again, wanted to come back to you with that update. I'll introduce our team members. To my right is Larry Owens, the IT manager for the KCK PD, and we also have Rob Anderson from our geospatial team, who's done a lot of the mapping and data analysis around this, and our vendor partner, Unite Private Networks. And the clicker is not going to work. There we go. Technology. I'm working on it. It's simple things that'll get you every time. That's right. Check the batteries. So as a reminder, the 4 objectives for the fiber network starts with public safety. The objective of the network is to build out and connect KCK police stations to support the body camera implementation and the data that's going to come with that. Second is UG operations and to increase the bandwidth capacity for our internal operations across the organization. Third is economic development and opening up conduit and access and providing additional fiber connectivity opportunities across businesses, including downtown area, but also out west in the Legends area too. And then fourth is community access and how can we support greater broadband connectivity for other community partners, like housing authorities, schools, et cetera, et cetera. The guiding principles: reuse existing conduit under roads that has been put there over time, share the technology infrastructure across departments, meet security requirements, both specifically for public safety agencies as well as for operational requirements, meet the growing operational needs for our organization as we use more data, more software to support the operations and productivity of the organization. Those connectivity needs grow, provide redundancy so that we don't have single points of failure. If a backhoe or an errant driver takes out a connection point, we don't lose the whole network, and maximize the value on the investment that the Commission has made in fiber. Our partners in this, we have a private sector partners, Unite Private Networks, a local Kansas City company. Converge One is providing the switches and configuration equipment, GBSA consulting, and we have frequent coordination across departments. So our technology group, PD, Public Works, Emergency Management, BPU, and I really just want to emphasize that this is an effort that has crossed departmental boundaries and really is an effort in collaboration that has worked quite well. Again, a refresher on what that PD fiber network route looks like. It extends along state and parallel avenues, creates a full circuit there. Out in the Legends area, it connects into PD headquarters, and it goes to the 911 center, heading south, and then across the river to connect up to South Patrol, and then back over essentially to Rainbow and up. So this is, we're creating a set of integrated sort of loops or circuits, and again, part of the redundancy efforts to make sure that if any one of those lines gets disconnected, that we don't lose the whole system, and that's the design we have. So for the PD network, and Larry can speak to this as well, it's designed to be CJIS compliant, Criminal Justice Information System. It has separation from other traffic on the network. It will be maintained by the police department, and it will provide 10 gigabit connectivity between each PD location and two locations, the 911 center and the PD headquarters. And it provides redundant connections into the PD headquarters. Yes.
Criminal Justice Information System.
They don't need to hear me. They don't need to know how ignorant I am.
And it's a national standard, of which KCJIS is the Kansas version of that, but it's a national security criminal justice information protocol. And then the backbone is a 40 gigabit up to 100 gigabit capable redundant connection between the 911 center and PD headquarters. And to give you a sense of scale on this is 200 times more capacity than we have in the current network. So this should meet current needs and well into future needs, with the opportunity to to expand well into the future. So phase one, connections. We've got West Patrol, Police Academy, the 911 Center, Midtown Patrol, Community Policing, Fleet Center, South Patrol, PD headquarters, the Carrier Hotel in downtown Kansas City, Missouri, which is a connection point. So we're going across the river, across jurisdictional boundaries, and to that point, which allows us to connect up to Johnson County, to KCMO, and have other regional interconnect points. And as we see there, the Johnson County Emergency Operations Center, which is intended to be the backup center for the Wyandotte County 911 Center, and also providing connection to the Mid-America Regional Council that provides the public safety access point, the PSAP points for jurisdictions. So they're being granted fiber as part of this project as well, which will allow for upgrades in the technology at the 911 Center. Future connection sites, we've got the Special Operations Unit, Traffic Support, Animal Services, and we're looking at some of the various opportunities or options for connecting those sites since they sit off of that main route. Some of them not necessarily as accessible, or so we're looking at what are the various options for connection. So in terms of where we are, we have fiber pulled into all of the phase one sites. So you see the list there: headquarters, West Patrol, Police Academy, NRC, Fleet, Midtown, and South Patrol. They're finalizing working across the bridge crossing and the railroad crossing, that southern route going south from the 911 Center through South Patrol. Scheduled to finish that up by August 31st of this year. And the 911 Center, like I said, has fiber pulled into it. Larry, do you want to speak to the cutover?
Yes, we are scheduled to cut over on Wednesday the 27th for the 911 Center. Shortly after, as soon as we determine there's nothing that's obstructing connectivity from that site back to headquarters, we'll go ahead and schedule out and proceed with the West Patrol Station, the Academy, Midtown, Community Policing, all of the sites that are on the State Avenue side.
So we're, again, moving forward with the fiber, and then following behind that is the switches and the connections, and basically turning them on and going live. So you'll see here, this is a visual representation we talked about in terms of where the work has been completed. Red is where fiber is installed. Blue is where the work is in progress. You can see a couple of segments, again, just to the east of 911 Center, and then down along Metropolitan Avenue there, and that's where there's some of that fiber is being hung on BPU poles, and so there's some utility relocates that have to happen as part of that work, which is why we have that August 31st deadline. But again, proceeding in pace, and then you'll see on this one too, the two red lines to the far east indicate the redundant connections to the Carrier Hotel in downtown Kansas City, Missouri.
Quick question. So some of it's underground, some of it's above ground, or it's all above ground?
It is predominantly underground.
Okay.
The only segment that is above ground, is that
Is the blue sections right now?
sections here that you see there.
Thank you.
And the benefit of that is that, again, if your vehicle hits a pole or something like that, or you have a storm or something like that, it's a more secure system. So, as I mentioned, in addition to the connecting up the police stations, we're looking at what are the other public safety opportunities around this. Mentioned the fiber that's given to Mid-America Regional Council for the PSAPs. That will improve connectivity. It will also lower the cost by retiring these slower T1 lines. Emergency management is finalizing an MOU with Johnson County on the connection that will set into motion the creation of the fiber of the backup center for 911 at the Johnson County 911 Center.
So PSAP, it's public safety.
Access point.
I know, you just have to keep reminding me of these things, so
Acronyms.
acronyms,
Soup here.
Thank you.
We have, as you'll see here in a next slide, identified fire stations along the route, and looking at for 2019, these are ones that are within a couple hundred yards of that those main trunk lines, and so we can begin to sort of pick those off and begin to provide that connectivity to fire stations as well. So with that, John, you want to jump over to the... This might be a little easier to see here. So that, again, this just gives you a representation of how we're looking at modeling or determining which of those stations we want to pick up next. So this is the fiber route. We've identified on there all of the fire stations that we have, and looking at, for example, the new fire maintenance facility is a close hop down to the south just across the river there, so that's an opportunity. So we'll be looking at, again, those places we can connect up. Leavenworth Road, as that project continues to move forward, we'll have conduit placed in as part of that project, and we can pick up stations along the way there as well. So again, Rob Anderson and the team has been working to, this is utilizing our Esri GIS platform to layer in different data. So we've got fire station data, we've got fiber data, we've got Public Works project data, again, all sort of utilized to help to plan and make capital choices about where we want to go next. Back. All right, so talk about traffic network and Public Works. Lydiana LeBoy has been leading this work and really working very closely with the BPU traffic team to develop a plan for traffic and camera communication. The approach is to right now is to decouple the traffic signal network from the BPU core network, and the BPU will continue to maintain the traffic signals and the network, but by getting it off of their core network, we get out from under the energy requirements, security requirements that they operate under. So it'll give the traffic operations more flexibility and the BPU team more flexibility in managing the traffic network. We're creating a direct fiber connection between UG Traffic Engineering, which is located here in City Hall, and Traffic Operations Center at BPU. So we've built that into the plan. And creating more backhaul capacity. So as we add traffic cameras, as we add camera and video capabilities to the overall network, that we have the fiber to carry that. And once the traffic network is cut over, then the UG will assume management of the traffic video. So right now, today, currently the BPU stores that traffic video for a short period of time. Once the network cuts over, then that will become part of UG traffic management. And lastly, as part of this project, as part of the I70 Bridge replacement, we put in a new connection to the station down there, to the treatment plant, as part of that I70 Bridge Relocation work.
As you can see, what I70 bridge replacement work are you speaking of?
Sorry, the I70 span replacement, the westbound. The westbound lanes where they took down the whole deck. One of the piers was cutting right through. We're going to cut right through
okay.
the existing connection, so we've run a new connection make sure they've got capacity.
Okay, thanks.
Is that what's going on the north side of I-70 right now? With the work that's happening around, what is that, 65th or so? Do you know? Oh, okay. You mean just the east-west viaduct?
Right by downtown.
Oh, okay, thank you. There's too many bridges. We have a lot of bridges here. Thank you.
Public Works might agree with you on that. Right, so UG operations, again, City Hall building connections have been completed since we last met, so we've got redundant City Hall connections on the north, south, and east sides of this building. That included the completion of the north route, and we've got new fiber between City Hall and Courthouse, so that we're again improving the courthouse connectivity as well. We've got new security firewalls for UG service, and that's going to provide 50 times more capacity than the current firewalls. So, again, planning so that we can take advantage of the additional connectivity speed from the fiber, and looking at ways to reduce our cost by buying internet essentially wholesale through the Cary Hotel in downtown Kansas City, Missouri. So we're moving forward on that. On economic development, again, looking at how does this create opportunities for businesses that want to locate here or expand here. There have been several businesses that have connected, have used the conduit in this project as a way to get enhanced service. So in that sense, that's exactly what we designed it and wanted it to do. It was to open up those opportunities, and essentially by creating a shared service in the form of underground conduit can lower the cost for service. And working with WIDEC, again, on potential opportunities as well. So using this as a marketing tool for businesses that are considering our community. Likewise, looking at, as we've showed you before, sort of downtown KCK network, what could that look like? One of the sort of common questions is, well, Google Fiber came to town and didn't you get service out of that? And the answer is we got residential service and brought competition into the marketplace, but it wasn't a commercial service, and a lot of our traditional commercial corridors lack the ability to get access to high-speed connectivity, so, even if they're willing to pay for it. It's just not available. So this is, again, another way to kind of cut through that chicken or an egg challenge of, well, the market isn't signaling demand for the service, ergo the telecoms won't build conduit into a place to say we're going to put the conduit in as a utility, essentially to utility level service, and then make that available to providers who want to provide service into our community. And we've got continuing discussions with community organizations, the school districts, the community college, housing authority, and other sort of nonprofits like Connecting for Good that operate in the community. So status and timeline, one of the areas we're finishing the Turkey Creek Bridge crossing, working with Google Fiber on that, finishing the railroad crossing along the south route that we've talked about, and completing the cutover to fiber at PD sites. Again, the phase one scheduled to complete on August 31st. So again, moving forward expeditiously on the overall project. So with that, I'll take any questions.
Other questions from the committee? Yes, Commissioner Johnson.
You mentioned on slide number 13, South Route is nearing completion of diverse connectivity. What does diverse connectivity include? Would be this bullet number.
Yeah, okay, yeah. So that is essentially if one line gets cut, then you've got another redundant pathway. So in the case of City Hall, because there's multiple places, we actually have three. We have a north, south, and an east entrance where fiber is coming in. So think of from the fire headquarters in, from the Ann side and from the Barnett side, are all coming in to one place. So it's just an additional level of redundancy.
And then when you talk about the network being expandable, you've already confirmed that it will be expandable. I'm looking at geographically, certainly I'm looking at northeast as far as Quindaro, but you also had places out west. When I looked at the fire stations that were, out west, particularly Piper, and then there's a number of them out by Bonner Springs and Edwardsville. Is there a timeline that we will be bringing the entire metropolis or city, county into? I want to use the word metropolis, I'm thinking too big. But will we be bringing the entire community, right, into this connectivity? Is there a timeline on that?
There is not a timeline on it. So we have started sort of master planning what that could look like and what some of those likely routes are. I mean, you mentioned Quindaro, so you look at Leavenworth Road, going essentially east to west, and then all the way down. You can connect back up into essentially 7th Street there as another potential loop. Same thing going down to the south towards Bonner and Edwardsville, whether that's sort of 435, K7. There's a sort of those options, K32. So you can begin to sort of think about how you could segment different. I'd say the biggest challenge is just funding, right? So there was an initial significant commitment made by this commission to fund the build out of the fiber network, again, to connect the police stations. We are working with Public Works so that as projects are put onto the docket, they include conduit in them. That is more piecemeal than what you're suggesting, which is a focused effort to build out a broad network across the community.
Right. Well, and it would be one section at a time. I also noticed Fairfax was not in the area as well. So, it could be a 5-year, 10-year plan. I don't know. I mean, I'm just thinking very broadly about how we might be looking at expanding it into all those major areas of our community.
That's right. And you go, like you said, north to Fairfax, across the river, into North Kansas City area. So there's lots of sort of potential ways to connect across the community. And we have we could show you, a master plan. It's not quite that grand, but where we've looked and thought through what those could look like.
Okay.
Mr. Howes, could you bring up slide 11, please? Thank you. So I finally got to look past the two bright colors that I was looking at and notice the yellow and the green. And so you want to say a little bit about those, what those represent? Oh, the gold and the green colors?
Yeah, I'll let Rob take that one. Rob, coming up.
Yeah, you don't get away with talking behind you have to be next to it too. If I do, you do. Thank you.
The orange out by the Speedway, for example, is underground conduit that we've already invested in.
Okay.
The green is a repaving project on this map, and the red is a
in process
full repaving or full reconstruction of the road.
Right.
So these are projects, and the reason we've laid it out like this is so that we can imagine spaces in which we can expand the network.
Okay. So this is a assumption I'm making, and you can slap me down if I'm wrong. The east-west corridors that we have stayed and parallel happened first because you could get the best bang for the buck as far as hitting the locations you needed to, and we already had some infrastructure because of redoing those roads. And then the same thing for Leavenworth Road between 38th and West. So as we expand that to, to 78th or so, is that where that ends at? Well, that's 80-something, isn't it, that fire?
Right.
That 81st? Yeah, okay. If it doesn't get moved, or who knows, okay. So.
And for example here, I went ahead and put the new fire station out there, and you can see that there's a project that's going to be done out there, so this provides perfect opportunity for us to lay conduit underground and connect that new fire station.
Because of work along Hutton Road? Okay.
Right.
All right. Thank you. I just like to create a really nice picture so the folks out there that aren't used to looking at this stuff all the time can kind of get an idea of what we're up to.
Agreed.
Thank you. I appreciate your hard work.
No problem.
Organizational skills.
Oh, I'm Rob Anderson, Geospatial Mapping and Public Works.
Thank you, Rob.
I'm just wondering, Alan, is there a way to put a price tag on what it would take to expand into all of the areas that are not currently going to be serviced? I mean, so that we can kind of mull over that.
I wouldn't do it tonight not having given it any
No, you couldn't
much
do it
thought,
tonight,
but
certainly, but-
certainly we could come back with a more thoughtful plan. And
I think one thing, when we talk about master planning, we're master planning for our public facilities. So when you talk about Fairfax, that's really like a commercial opportunity that we may or may not want to do. So right now, we're planning for all of our public facilities, so the parks and public works and fire stations and police stations. Those are the kind of things that we're looking at this point.
Sure.
Whether we make that leap to go to a commercial type application or a not-for-profit type application, that's yet to be determined.
Well, even if you kept it confined to just the public areas, there's a dollar amount that's associated with, a future dollar amount that's associated with those. I think that would be helpful for us to be thinking about for future years.
Agreed.
What we might be doing successively, in those years.
I think there's kind of two things happening here. One is that we're ready for the opportunity, so if the company we partnered with happens to make a sale, we get pulled right along with them, and that's just part of the deal. But the other part of it is, like Alan has said, every time there's a new project, we're gonna lay some conduit down so that we can pull it when we're ready. So it's planning and it's being ready for the next opportunity.
Right.
So it's kind of a combination of both. So something could change in the next 6 months or not, it just depends.
Okay.
so to your example in Fairfax, to Joe's point, if there was a customer that chose Unite as their provider, and then Fairfax, and they connected up through 7th Street, we would get fiber pulled along with that. So there's also, by the structure of the partnership, benefits to us as they expand their commercial footprint. We have closer access to a lot of our public facilities as well.
All right, other comments or questions on this item? That was good discussion. We really appreciate all the effort. August 31 sounds like party day for the end of phase 1. Thank you very much. And that was an information item only. And the final item on this agenda is traffic management guide. This is a presentation. We've got Lydiana LeBoy with traffic engineer, and we've got Troy Shaw here to present this item.
Thank you for your time, commissioners. We met about 2 months ago. We came here and talked about our traffic management guide and our plan for this project. We asked for your feedback as to some of the things you heard from your constituents as to what they're interested in and the calls you get most often. So we focused on those for the next couple months and came up with our draft guide for a few areas, setting speed limits, traffic calming, and also signing. Lydiana is going to talk about that as we go through, and then we'll feel free to answer questions throughout the presentation.
Good evening. I'm Lydiana LeBoy, the city traffic engineer. And Troy said, we came here earlier and presented to you a guideline of what is the transportation management guide. And today we're just gonna talk about those specific areas in more details. This is our second presentation, and you receive a package that contains the document in the draft format that contain all the details that you hopefully will have the opportunity to review. What do I do? There I go. Good. All right, so the first topic that we're gonna talk about is traffic calming. And when we talk about traffic calming is when somebody in the urban area, residential areas, they concerned about speeding in their neighborhood or too much traffic in their neighborhood. So when those concerns come in here, that's why we generally call those traffic calming. Normally people come in and said, I want speed bumps in my area, speed bumps in my areas. So what we had done in our traffic calming management plan, we had outlined our procedures to evaluate those locations and consideration. How do we collect data? How do we evaluate it? And what we're presenting now is that there's more applications that are applicable to address those concerns. And so here I have few pictures that show the speed bump. We have dividers that enhance the beauty of the residents while also cut through traffic, or traffic circles and intersections that can also help improve the environment and also reduce speed. The important thing about this is that we're not, speed humps are something that deteriorates with times. It requires maintenance. So we like to consider speed bump as a temporary solution for addressing the concerns. However, there's other options that can be more applicable, and those are the ones that we want to identify as we go through this process to enhance our neighborhoods. And in the documentation that you receive also, we have a list of alternatives and applications to address traffic calming issues. And we had a kind of summarize it on the effectiveness of each of those measurements and how they are applicable for different type of roadways and the relatively cost for applying those. This is a kind of a summary that identify those areas. And one in particular important thing that we need to understand is the speed zone. One misconception from the general public is that to address high speed or what is understanding that a high speed on neighborhoods is to lower speed limits. And we have considered a number of areas in our city that have very low speed limit that are not in any sense related to the conditions on the road. So therefore, we're taking this opportunity to, as a education process, to guide our general public and our staff to understand the importance of establishing a speed zone that is related to the conditions of the road. And we call these like the speed zoning, how we establish speeds, maximum speed. So speed zoning means is establishment of reasonable and safe speed limits based on the roadway conditions, the design, and based on an engineering study. The intention of that is to identify the maximum speed limit that reflects the safe speed as is determined by the large majority of the drivers. The method that is known or most widely recognized and effective to establish that is what we call the 85th percentile speed for each condition of the road.
Lydiana?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. Looks like you're going to tell us what that means right now.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so what is 85th percentile speed? 85th percentile speed is the speed that 85% of the drivers are speeding at or below that speed, and is what is the speed also at what the drivers feel comfortable driving through a segment of the road. So, as you had no obstructions and they are free flow driving, what speed are they going to be driving? And that's what the 85th percentile means. It represents the what people kind of adopted by themselves, saying, I'm driving this road and I go at 40 miles per hour, 30 miles per hour, 70 miles per hour, whatever that is, depending on the road environment. You know, in assuming this, and this is statistically research and observation has shown, is that most people try to get to the destination as fast as they can, but they do it in a reasonable and prudent way, you know, to the condition of the road, depending on the normal conditions of the traffic, the weather, and the roadway geometry and conditions. Therefore, and it's also been proven through research that when you set up maximum speed limits at the 85th percentile speed, those are directly related to the lowest number of accidents related directly to speeds. And for, you know, so you want to make an example about that, you know, think about the urban core over here. You know, you normally in urban core will have drive, you know, with speed between 25, 30, 35, but in that range. But you're not gonna be normally doing 70 miles per hour in your conscious, in a responsible conscious. You know, as you're chased by the police, that's another story. But as a responsible driver, you won't do that. And in freeway, you're not gonna do 20 miles per hour. You're not gonna do 30 or 35. You're really gonna be doing 60, 75, whatever the conditions are. So that's, two comparable examples to identify what is the 85th percentile and how does it feel. Here that I had just a graphic that shows, when we do data collection, how does that show and how the 85 percentile is represent. This is a graphic that shows the variation on the speed. And you can tell it's by percents. The line that across is represent the 85 percentile. So above that line is the number of vehicles and the frequency at the speed at the frequency of the speeds that they're driving. And you can see all of those people are, driving below 35 miles per hour. This is an actual data collection that we did last year in a neighborhood where the speed limit is posted as 20 miles per hour. And we did an evaluation and find out that certainly people are driving over the speed limit, which is set up pretty low. This is only one location in the neighborhood. This is actually the entire map. When we do data collection, we don't collect data just in one point. We collect data in different points to identify what does that mean, how the speed vary in every location. So the points there, A to F, identify the 85 percentile throughout the corridor in the neighborhood. This was a traffic calming request that was brought in by the association of this area. And when we presented the data to at the neighborhood meeting, we explained the same information to them. They say, yeah, it makes sense. This road should not be 20 miles per hour. 30 miles per hour makes more sense. That's what I like to drive. And with their consensus, we made the change, and we'll tell them what the next steps were. And we had changed it, and we had not had any complaint since then. And then, the importance of doing this is that constantly police department was coming to this neighborhood to tag people that were responsibly driving the road for the conditions of the road. But it was a sense, because we had too low speed, that people were speeding. So most people were given tickets, even though they were driving at the condition for the road. Things that influence the speed can be the number of lanes, travel lanes, the width of the road, the shoulders, whether the presence of vertical curve or horizontal curve, whether there's obstruction in the visibility, and the proximity of buildings or other obstructions. So those things affect how we perceive the road and how safe they are, and we establish our speed. In summary, the benefits of 85 percentile and establish that as our practice is that when the maximum speed limit is set to an 85 percentile, we know by research that from the data that we collect that 85% of the drivers will be within the law, which is what we will be posting the speed limit. Research has demonstrated that in setting out the speed, the 85 percentile leads for safer travel for everybody. What we want to accomplish is maintain a steady flow of traffic. That's what is achieve the better safety conditions for all travelers. We will effectively allocate our law enforcement and manage our resources better. Rather than being calling and be sitting, looking at people going 30 miles, people, tagging on ticketing everybody, our resources can be better allocated to locations that really needs some enforcement. And we expect to lower the number of accidents related to speed. So in overall, 85 percentile is a best practice to do, and that's what our recommendation will be. And following that, another part of the calls that we get oftentimes is that people are concerned about kids playing on the street, or if we have a child or a person with some impediment, people feel that signs needs to be there to alert driver. We want to bring to our attention that per state statute for this department's Kansas, the Department of Transportation of Kansas, the state of Kansas, as well as the city, we had adopted the Manual of Uniform Traffic Control Devices, which regulate not regulate, but provide the guidance on how to use and establish regulatory warning on guide signs. The signs that you see over here that are often signs that are requested by our citizens are signs that are not supported by MUTCD. And the primary reason for that is that those signs do not change the behavior of the people that they're already doing. It just simply, the people will not react differently than they will normally do. Only there is an obstruction or something physically that made the change. So, for example, a responsible person will see a kid cross, on the street, and they will slow down. Not because there's a sign or missing or the sign, is because there's something that made them reacted and change their behavior. So the multiple, when you're trying to outline residential areas with slow traffic on too many signs, then it tends to have a negative effect because people then don't pay attention. And when you really want to establish or bring something to that attention, people tend to neglect it because there's too many signs. So you want to reduce the number of unnecessary signs. These signs also are related to full expectation from drivers or pedestrians also, give us a sense of security. So our advice and our programs also, safety education programs emphasize, making people understanding what is a good driver practices, be responsible for what they do, and for our pedestrians to use designated crossings as the safer location for crossing. We want to emphasize and continue to educate our people to say play in the streets are not the location where we want our kids to be playing. We just need to be more responsible on that. Drivers will navigate the street at the speed that they feel comfortable on, and they will react to the conditions of the road as necessary. With that, I just summarized those 3 topics that were, more frequently asked for residents, and now open for questions. Yes.
Before you do any traffic any traffic changes in District 5, Mr. Connor, all the other members, Gordon, Melissa, you had better tell me well in advance, and it better not be a roundabout. Are there any questions about that?
Yeah.
We will tell you well in advance. I promise.
I don't think you meant to say you will tell me anything. I would think what you meant to say was you will notify me.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
We now intended to do this in a vein, not only for District 5, but for all districts. It is important for us that as we make changes, the community understand why we're making these changes. Just as the sample that I provided earlier and other samples that I had discussed with some commissioners previously on other situations. We're not gonna, I know, as a city traffic engineer, I could go do the change immediately as I understand that that's the need. But when involved in behavior changes, my practice, our practice is to bring the people together and notify them as needed so that the change is well known before it's established.
Commissioner Philbrook.
So if I have a street or so that I need to ask you about maybe some modification and how it's being handled, it'd be all right to give you a call?
Yes,
you can
absolutely.
take a look at it and make suggestions.
Yes, absolutely.
Because there are some troubles.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a way to do things. We first need to know where is the location and was it specific, and then we make some observations and collect some data. And based on the priority or what is the concern, we identify what is the issue. The most important thing is to identify what is it that we want to change.
Right.
And then we can identify what the solutions are.
Yeah, and how much it costs, et cetera.
And how much it costs, is there short terms or long terms conditions?
Okay.
Just this morning we were talking with Mr. Johnson this morning, so one of concern, and we had the data in hand. I was able to explain to him what we were able to develop a plan, action plan to respond to our residents. So our doors are open to discuss any concerns that you have.
Okay. You'll be hearing from me.
No problem.
Just have a couple of kind of general questions and then a couple of specific comments. The purpose of completing the traffic management guide, what's the big picture purpose of having such a guide?
The major purpose of this is transparency, for one, not just for our residents, because and historically we've had a lot of requests, and we actually had a traffic calming packet before that we would send out, and it gave a little bit of information, but it didn't really go through our process as to how we did things and how we determined, okay, you get this, you get this. So this kind of helps with transparency and shows the public what we're doing step by step for the traffic calming, for example. The guide in totality will also include information for designers and developers as far as what we require as we're asking for our standards and what we require when they come and present something to the planning department. So it should give a heads up to them as to what we're asking for. So it really just encompasses everything related to traffic into one document that's hopefully by the time we get done with it, it'll be easily searchable and be able to find information quickly, and it'll just be out there for everybody to be able to utilize.
You know, that's really helpful just to hear that, because I'll just use this as an example. Back when the Legends Village West area was new, I remember driving that back then and thinking, what's the purpose behind this certain aspect of it? As we drive through I guess it's 98th Street, the curvy S Road, there are portions of that I find myself driving and wondering, well, why was that developed that way? So I think it would be interesting for the public to be able to know and understand, well, why did we do that? Because there's probably a reason not known to me, but a reason nonetheless. It's interesting to me, having just driven all the way to Yellowstone and back, I did a lot of driving on roads that were not known to me. And I think it's very interesting the difference between driving in town on roads that we're on every single day, and maybe something's been there all along that we didn't notice, or maybe something important hasn't been there all along that we just don't realize should probably be there for us in terms of traffic management. And you know what I noticed about driving on the roads that weren't known to me, how important those street signs and clear street markings were for a traveler that is not used to traveling on those roads, and you know, really good strong paint markings on the road, markings that show me that the lane I'm in is going to end. And I've noticed since I've been back, we have lanes in our community that do end, and no warning whatsoever that that's going to happen. So I would think, you know, things like signage and street marking, and also one thing I noticed driving out of town was the use of lighting around the signs. And I know there are communities that use the stop signs that blink at you and give you warning even in the dark that a stop sign is coming, and they might even have a strips in the road that make noise as you drive over them to tell you something's changing about the road you're on and you need to be paying attention. And of course, I'm sure that's a safety mechanism. I know in Baldwin City, prior to installing those, they had fatalities at a very surprising stop sign. And so they put those strips in the road. So just things like that are the things that I think about. And I will tell you, obviously, we get requests for speed bumps. And we even get neighbors who go out and put them in just because they've decided that that's what their street needs. And then I don't know what the protocol is after we go out and discover that a speed bump's been installed without permission, but I've seen that happen in this community. And then just very specifically, 75th Street between Parallel and State strikes me as a road that would be worth reviewing this 85th percentile rule. It's been 20 miles an hour since I was a teenager because someone was hit and killed by a car on that road. And so I completely understand why that neighborhood wanted a 20-mile-an-hour speed limit, but no one driving on that road is driving 20 miles an hour. So those are my comments.
Commissioner?
Yes.
Yeah, somebody is. Me. I make a lot of people mad when I drive 20 miles an hour on that road, believe me.
Well, I do too, now that I got stopped.
Oh, well, I don't want to get stopped, so there you go.
So after that, I do drive 20 miles an hour on that
The
road.
interesting part of that is that 75th Street is kind of on one of our collector roads that connect from parallel to state, and its residential street is posted 30 miles per hour. So what we had created is that people cut through that 30 miles per hour because people wants to go quickly through it. So, is it an imbalance on there? And you have most people do not drive 20 miles per hour, but some people wants to be under the law, right? So then there's an imbalance on traffic, and that's where we create situations that are desirable.
Well, it's not that my Mini Cooper doesn't want to go faster. I have to throw out, the ball and chain to slow me down so I don't get in trouble. But I can understand the concern on that road because there's a lot of people that walk along on that road. It's a wider road, and we haven't designated maybe any to the side, as maybe if we put in their bicycle thing on each side, or whatever, and put some lines on. I don't know. It might help a little bit to give people, okay, I can walk over here, and maybe some of us will avoid hitting them or something. Yeah, I know there's a lot of different options to do, but it's almost like a two-lane boulevard. It's pretty wide, but still.
It is wide, and that's why we don't just randomly go and change it. I'm not just gonna get data collected and we'll say, oh, the 85 percentile is 40 miles per hour and go change it. We'll have to look at the environment around it and make a conscious decision of what we want to do, and is there other options to help manage that speed as the way that we want it, like something that is reasonable for the drivers as well as for the residents.
Well,
that's a good point Lydiana made, is that, for example, a street like that, if we did a speed study in the 85th percentile, came in at 40 miles an hour, well, that probably shouldn't be 40 miles an hour. So, okay, maybe we should set it at 30, and then what else can we do to the road to make people drive 30 miles an hour? Maybe it is just putting stripes on the ground, because sometimes that does slow people down if they feel like they're a little tighter, or do we have to add some other feature to help it out? So that's kind of where we're at, the balancing act. We're not saying we're just setting everything at whatever the 85 percentile speed is. It's kind of a give and take as we look for the best solution for whatever segment of road we're on.
Kind of like the parking on one side but not the other, different things like that.
Right.
I guess
noticed.
I can bring to an example that we have, Central Avenue. From 7th to 6th Street or I70, when I got here and we started my job, we collected data there from a request. People were going way over 40 miles per hour.
They still are.
And they still are. But now it's a lot more difficult because we had changed those. There's more activity, there's more parking, now it's more constrained. People are not driving up to 60 miles per hour. That's they will sometimes before.
Well, so I'm going to argue with you about that.
Cool.
Because I've been down in that area recently, and I would tell you that there is no way I'm getting out of my car until there's nobody coming from the east, because they are hauling it. Yeah. I mean, they come over there and they just keep going until they hit 7th, if there's a stop sign or a stoplight, I mean. So they're still moving pretty fast. I was down there and I thought to myself the other night, God, we need a gigantic speed bump. No. A nice big tall one. They have to slow down, and they need a four-wheel drive to get over, because it's pretty rambunctious coming off Central, especially now with the change with the highways and stuff.
Yeah. And, one important thing about that is when we implement the changes, we can then go back after a while and collect more data and see how it's effective or not.
Thank you.
Commissioner Kane, did you have an item? No? You're just ready to move on. Well, your timing is excellent because we will thank you for your presentation. Look forward to the completed guide. And this is an information item only. And that is the end of this meeting. So we will adjourn this meeting and be ready to call to order our next meeting. All right.
I will now call this meeting of the Administration and Human Services Standing Committee to order. We welcome everyone to this meeting, and public comment is welcome. Everyone speaking needs to use a microphone. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Roll call. Philbrook. Johnson.
Here.
Payne. Bynum.
Here.
Markley.
Here. Next, we have the minutes from our April 23rd meeting. Is there a motion for approval? We have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Those minutes have been approved. We have just one item on our agenda tonight, and that is an update on the MyWICO mobile application deployment. And Alan is back to give us this presentation as well. It's a busy night for him.
All right, Commissioners, thank you. So we're here to give you an update on the changes and the performance of the MyWICO mobile application and give you an overall picture of 311 as we enter the halfway mark of the year. So with me here tonight to my right, Brett Deichler, our 311 Director, Andrew Pereira, the Deputy Treasurer, and also from our Pay It team, we got Monica Harrell, we have Grant Gordon, and we have Gene Noble with us here this evening as well. And they've been great partners through this process. So just as a reminder, what we're trying to do here is support 3 of the commission goals on blight reduction, on safety and perception of safety, and customer service through these efforts. And really what we're talking about fundamentally is enhancing digital services. So how can we better serve, engage, and communicate with residents? How can we provide those great self-service options and meet residents where they are, give them the option of mobile devices? Pew survey data from earlier this year shows the number up now to 77% of Americans owning a smartphone. Ubiquitous at younger age groups. The fastest growing age group is 65 and older. And again, strong ownership in households below 30,000 in income and between 30 and 50,000. So again, the purpose of this is that we want to make government services easy and accessible to people where they can reach them today on their devices. So again, this is a good story about collaboration across the UG. We've got multiple departments involved in this: finance, treasury, 311, our technical services team, geospatial and mapping, our performance and innovation team, neighborhood resource center, public works, our website group, and our vendor partners as well. So it takes all of them to make this go. So what services do we got now? We rolled this out in November, at the end of November of last year. And so what we have today is property tax. We have mobile 311 services. We now have vehicle renewals. We've got a new dashboard experience if you haven't been on there. We've got enhanced payment services. We've got account management and a digital profile and wallet capabilities. So this is what we have on the app today. And I should mention that really this is the same experience whether you're on the website or on a mobile device. So one platform that provides the same experience regardless of how you're accessing it. So what have we seen online and mobile payments? In the transactions, introduced the ACH e-check option. That was not previously an option, but rolled out through this process, and that is the free payment option. So previously, people could pay on with a credit card for free. The UG would pay those credit card fees. We provided this ACH as the free option. Now, if people want to pay with a credit card, they still have that option. There is a 2.5% transaction fee that is a pass-through, so to cover that cost.
Thank you very much. I like the ACH. It's pretty nice.
It's working well, and as you can see, over 2/3 of the transactions have chosen to use the ACH option to make those payments. I should also mention that as part of this, we previously had a $100,000 sort of upper limit on the transaction you could make. So for some of our larger customers in the community, they would exceed that, so they would either make multiple $100,000 payments or pay some other method. Now they're able to use ACH and to make some of these larger tax payments to us at a very, very low cost to the UG. So what have we seen since we rolled this out? And this is split across calendar years. So we look at first half tax collection and second half tax collection is what you're seeing here. Stories are going from left to right. Total tax collection, we see in the gray bar, the 2016 was just above 3 million. 2017 first half tax collection, so this is the December deadline, jumped up to nearly 6 million. The second half tax collection, which is the smaller of the two halves, we see just under 2 million in 2017 and just under or at 3 million in 2018. What does that translate to in terms of the actual number of transactions? Again, moving to the right here, we see total transactions. In 2016, first half was about 1,800, jumped up to nearly 2,500, and second half payments a little under 1,000 in 2017 and up to 1,500 in 2018. So what we see is that people are using it. We're seeing increased adoption rates, and this comes with relatively little sort of in the way of marketing or pushing it or repeat transactions. So again, on the right, you see those totals translated into the dollars through ACH and credit card, and transactions through ACH and credit card as well. So we're pleased by the adoption that we've seen so far. Continue to improve the tax functionality and working closely with Andrea and the Treasury team to get that feedback on what customers are experiencing, and have then folded that back into the app. So delinquency payment updates are now included as part of the payment, including partial pay on those as well. You can now select and pay for multiple parcels, which was something that customers had asked for, and we're seeing lots of people that are paying for, and they have multiple parcels and they can select them and pay at once. We improved the address search functionality to make it easier to find your address. Again, that was one of those initial customer feedback areas for improvement, and along with a helper image, which is essentially an image of your tax bill that says, here's where you find your tax ID, here's how you translate that into what you need to put in the online. The option to look up name ID or owner ID, and again, the assessment line item details. So the point is that there's a feedback loop that's taking this customer feedback and translating into updates to the application. So this also has a dollar bottom line implication for the UG. So in terms of fee avoidance, if we had maintained those same level of transactions that under our previous cost structure, then we would have paid $320,000 more in credit card transaction fees as an organization. Again, a lot of that shifted over to ACH because that was the free option. In terms of cash savings, what we've seen in working with Treasury is you look at the 2017 to 18 Q1 comparison on bank fees, and you're seeing over $80,000 in hard cash savings on bank transaction fees. Again, this is the shift to ACH, which is a much, much lower cost option for payments for the organization. Andrea and the Treasury team have reduced data entry, double data entry there. So that's been a significant, I think, staff cost savings, time savings, as well as automating the reconciliation process on a daily basis to make it much easier to upload a batch into CIC and do that reconciliation. So again, looking at and working with her team on what are those opportunities to improve the back office processing of payments. We're looking at and settled on a process for reducing the collection efforts for return transactions. So if an ACH comes back, it could either be that they miss it in a digit or something like that. There'll now be a 3-step collection process where Payit will send them a reminder email. People have the opportunity to correct that before it jumps back over to Treasury staff to go and notify them. And again, one of the goals here being to reduce walk-in traffic and provide easier online services that are convenient for people. Andrea, anything you want to add? Okay, all right. So one of the other newer items and something I'm excited about is state services that are now being layered onto the app. So Payit has also provide services for the state of Kansas through the ICANN app. And one of the first services is vehicle renewals, which also is something that we execute at a local government function as well. So we're among the first nationwide really to offer this integrated state and local services on a single mobile platform. You can do your vehicle renewals via ICANN, or you can do it through MyWICO. It's the same experience. And again, and I did this with my own vehicle renewals earlier this month. And it's just, it takes a matter of minutes to use your tax form that you get and go on and renew your vehicle. There's other state services that are going to be layered in, including vital records and potentially license renewal as well, that is coming behind this. So again, trying to there's a blurry line between what is a state service and what is a local government service, and it's blurry enough for those of us who work in it. It's very fuzzy for residents, and so we're trying to eliminate that distinction and just make it again as easy as possible for people to get the services that they need to do. So what does that look like in terms of web tags data? In those vehicle renewals, we can see the 2017 web tag information previously, and then you see the May 2018 on the bottom right-hand corner. So we're not seeing a significant move upwards, but it's trending in that direction. And again, this just rolled out in June 1st on the MyWICO app. So this is, and in April for the state of Kansas as a whole. So this is very, very, very new. And we just put the renewal numbers up there, 37 on the MyWICO app as of last week. Interestingly enough, 6,384 renewals since April, since the go live. So not an insignificant number of transactions that are being moved into an online space. With that, I'll turn it over to Brett to give us an update on 311.
Thank you, Alan. Good evening, everyone. I just want to take a couple of quick minutes to show you a few slides on some of the data we're collecting down in 311 right now, which we look at trends all the time, and when we're talking about a mobile app, obviously we need to pay attention to really what's going on out there on the streets at that level as well, because you'll see here between this particular slide and what I'm getting ready to show you next, there's some variations in how people are utilizing 311, and in particular here you can see at the top municipal court calls are 37.5%, and sometimes they increase as high as almost in the mid-40s for us. They're our number one user, but a lot of that is a call transfer type of request, more so than a service request. And then we start working down into the public works and district courts. I think these are fairly general. They stay that way. They don't change places very often, but it is very indicative of how we operate in our operations center and how we treat that data set. Then we start to look more into how are the people using the app now. We get into this particular slide right here, and you can see the code enforcement there where it was lower on that previous slide. Now is the key leader here. It's the mobile app. It tells me that once we get everything finalized and get full functionality here, that we'll probably see another spike in this and how people utilize the mobile app, in particular for like neighborhood request and municipal court types of things. But trash is big for us, as you could probably imagine, and I think that when we start getting some of the geolocational things solidified here, you'll also see an increase in that too in the mobile side. But from a trend perspective, that's good for us to be able to analyze this type of data and just create as much of a one-stop shop and full functionality as possible on that particular side, so people will feel comfortable in getting in there and utilizing that. And I think the key to that is they are starting to recognize that request is going somewhere, first of all, and it's actually being responded to, and then there's automated notifications, things like that, and that closed loop we're going to talk about in a minute. But they're very comfortable, and we're receiving calls on that, just basically thanking us for acknowledging these requests and getting them done. So from a mobile perspective, that's a good thing. We like to think that maybe the calls would start to diminish inside the call center. That hasn't been indicative. I think that we're basically taking on more of the population. So once the app was launched, it turned right around, and our calls are staying about the same, and we're now getting more and more on the app side. So I think with that, we can talk a little bit about this closed loop. I think Alan's going to probably talk a minute on the backside as well, but I'll lead off here with a general perspective of what we're trying to do is to obviously take all the requests through those types of either phone, website, or mobile app for as an inlet side. We will take and pass that on next to the operations side. We will also send an automated notification out now that comes through our dynamic system, which is basically letting the constituent know that their request was received. And then we will move into basically transmitting that information to the department so they can work that too. Once we get a little further into the analytics side of our data processing and build some more basic business intelligence reporting, we'll be able to do some things in the operations side that actually probably help the unified government perform even better, and there'll be some additional cost savings there to the association as a whole. Once that's done, we are getting into the point now where we have assigned that, and we can basically tell by either talking directly to the department ourselves. It doesn't notify the constituent yet, but the closed part of that loop in the future will allow the constituent to receive a closed notification of what was done and when. And also, we in the Operations Center will receive that same type of notification that will come back into that Dynamics platform, and will allow our customer service reps to basically talk intelligently about what was done there. So the data that gets done at the operations end is going to be viewable to us, so we can talk if someone calls back and wants a little more information on that. That's why those last two circles over there, basically at 8 and 10 o'clock, aren't completely blue yet, but here in the very near future they're going to be. So, Alan, did you want to add anything to that?
No, just the only thing I'd add is just the two on the left side are where we start talking about system integrations, right? So we're talking about integration with the code enforcement Excella system. We're talking about integration with other business systems that exist across the organization, and so that's where, you know, that's why it's taking longer to get those pieces in place. So we've got the front end between the mobile app and 3-in-1 core system functioning well. We're transmitting those to departments, and now we're on the, you know, we're plowing through the work of making those connections so we can get that closed loop back to residents.
Go ahead. Debbie? Okay, yeah, now, okay, I apologize because I thought this was Alan's slide. So on the communication side, we are basically emailing information to the departments right now. Until full integration happens, we'll basically take the calls or requests, however we get those in the operations center, and we'll log those into basically our system and try to track those. Well, once full integration happens, that'll be perfect for everybody because the automated notifications will go out to the constituent. The operations end will receive the information in real time as to what needs to be done, and then once that information's completed, it'll come back in the full closed loop scenario and notify everybody that what's been done, and we can put some costs to the backside of that to see what it really costs to perform. So that's future enhancement like we were just talking about right there, but at this point in time, if we are not integrated with someone, like for the Board of Public Utilities as an example, we will take and still register a light outage, you know, light pole's got an issue with the light, or certain things for them, basically contact them via email, and we will still issue a full-blown report each day. We've got a handful of departments we work with that seem to receive a lot of requests, as you could tell a couple slides earlier. But what we do in the operations center is we kind of cover that in duplicity. We'll basically send those off, and after we in a full-blown report each day to the appropriate personnel at those sites, so we can you know, tag team that and get that thing done, and then we try to close that loop. If someone calls us, we kind of still manually have to look at that, but once integration occurs, that'll basically take care of itself, and we should be able to see it in real time. So any questions on that particular slide? That's a little more than...
Well, so I noticed that upvote other submissions. So does that mean that if you have several people call on something that it gets moved up the chain of being taken care of faster?
Well, there's a couple of ways. And Alan said this, and this is kind of tagging his language, the many-to-one, one-to-many scenario, where if you have one big issue, a water main break at 5th and Minnesota, and everyone's on their way to work, and we see, you know, 105 people see that, we really just need one request. It's a service request that comes in first. People can give the thumbs up, yeah, I like that too. So it throttles down to where Public Works or whoever's going to repair that gets that work order. Then once it's done, it goes back to many, so everybody on that 105 list gets notified of what was done. So we're not creating a bunch of individual 105 requests, but we've got 105 with one being the main primary and 104 siblings that are attached to that particular request.
Thank you for clearing that up.
Do you want me to talk about this?
Sure. Well, I'll ask Payette to talk about this one as well. So I know there's you know, the photo is one we've been talking about, and it's coming. We'll show you here a prototype of what that's going to look like, and then they talk a little bit about the sort of timing and the work that's going on behind that. So, Jerron, can you click on that image? on the screen, please. Thank you. Yep. Just going to run through it's going to run you through a little demo here. So you put in your address, tell you where it is, tell about the issue, you know what it is, and you add a photo. It's pretty fast, but go through it. You add access to your camera, you take the image of the pothole. It becomes integrated with the report for part of your submission. So that's the capability that's being created and delivered. I'll ask Monica and team if you want to sort of talk about the timing on this. And again, I know this has been of interest to the commission.
Sure. So we have started the work. We've been peeling the layers of the onion back and discovered that there's a little more to it than we thought. So our timeline's a bit longer than we were originally hoping for. We were originally hoping that you'd have your hands on this late this month or early July. And we'll probably be about a month behind that because we want to be very careful and thoughtful about how we're designing this so that it's usable not only for this purpose, but also so that we can use it in other places in the future too. So this should be ready for you to start testing sometime mid to late August, we're hoping.
So it's coming.
It's coming. July for testing, and then out to the public in August. Thanks.
Yeah, I'd like to add a point of clarity, something's very important with this too, where when you're talking about geolocational services and you have a known site as address as something that can be verified, you can basically send our crews out, our public works people can go straight to that address. A lot of times you'll get somewhere in a corner, somewhere near a park, somewhere that's not necessarily registered as a full-blown site as address, but you can take and get the geolocational coordinates and drop a pin into the map where it makes it real helpful for us. So even if I was using the app, I should be able to go and take and drop that pin, then that allows our staff to basically look, so when they're out there, they can kind of see where it's at. So it's not just has a photo with it, but at that point in time, you can go basically to those coordinates and find out exactly where it is, if it's not going to come up on Google Maps or something like that as a registered address.
So when you take the photo, then you've got the GPS.
It puts the coordinates into that.
Okay.
And being able to pin that too and drop that pin makes it real easy for you as a user and also our staff to help identify the location.
Yeah, I understand. It's a lot easier to that than try to explain where that
makes it
issue is.
I agree. So I just want to make sure everybody understands that functionality is there too.
Great, thank you.
Let's see. Nope. There we go. All right. So in terms of next steps, a big one, continue to track the usage and the marketing on this one. So we also tested some email marketing materials around the first half and second half tax deadlines, and we saw how those affected the performance. So again, we'll be continuing to use that. We presented last Friday at the Kansas Treasurers meeting, talked about that and learned more about the state services that are coming. We'll have more information in the UG Citizen newsletter that's coming out this summer. We'll have more in the fall tax mailing itself so that we, again, sort of drive people towards the online payment. We have My WICO and UG t-shirts here this evening. So, Monica, you want to just hold up your t-shirt there? So we'll have those for staff as well. We know Treasury staff like to wear their t-shirts and others. We'll have that.
Are they union made?
Good question. Locally made. That's a good question. We'll look for the bud. And on the right there, you see that we've had 3,600 unique users, 16,000 sign-ins, and 672 total downloads. So again, just sort of keeping an eye on and tracking how adoption is on the application. The services that are coming, we're looking at courts and citations. So to Brett's earlier point, 40% of the 311 call volume is around municipal court. We're going to look at can we do payments via.
I like the payment enhancements. Talking about speeding tickets. Yay.
And the other part on courts is not just the payment side, but it's also the ability to send reminders to people. So if they have an account, you can say, hey, don't forget your court is coming up in 24 hours or something like that. So part of that is trying to siphon off some of that call volume that says, when's my court date? You know, when do I need to be there, kind of stuff. Looking at police department alarms as well. Again, this is a recurring transaction for people that have alarm systems. It can be, so we're looking at utilizing the application for that. I talked about 311, the photographs, the integrations, the closed loop pieces as well, and digital registration. Brett, do you want to talk about that one too?
Yeah, a little bit the things we're talking about in 311 right now would be to kind of put a handout out there to let people register. Don't wait until you have to necessarily call us for service, but to pre-register per se. And I think that'll help our staff once we get fully integrated where we have a contact-based system. So if someone from my house was to call in about trash a couple of times and someone called for something else, it would automatically have that address registered, or I would be registered as one of those callers as an example, as would my wife. But to get that out there and get a digital registration campaign into the community to where we can pre-register people before they use our service would, I think, be an enhancement to speed and efficiency inside the system.
So when you talk about digital registration, you're linking that into a location?
Well, yes, absolutely, but put a digital form together so it's easy to access, and then it's automatically loaded into our system. So we would, you would not have to do anything, any mailings or anything else. You could just go online and do a single sign-on from your, any type of thing that you've already been on Facebook, anything else in that, social media content, and then just come across and drag that information in and create an account with us. So once you did call, it automatically recognized and would help speed up that front-end conversation or the use of the app. It just boom, boom, boom. It gets things done a lot quicker, cuts through all the minutiae at the front-end registration process once you're there. So.
Okay.
Think of it like just say you're a new resident, right? So you've got a whole set of steps you need to do as a new resident. You've got to sign up for this, that, and the other. This could be one of those steps that's incorporated into that to make it easier for people to access services in the community.
Thank you.
You want me to talk a little bit about the telephone piece?
So in terms of next steps, again, continue to promote, build the user base, iterate on the application as we talked about based on user feedback, continue to work on the reporting, tracking, closed loop, and continue really to approach these sort of initiatives with this integrated cross-department team. This is not something that the knowledge department or technology or anybody can do alone. It's really with the work of the other departments as well. So with that, any questions?
Can you go back to that very first slide where you had the statistics about cell phone use? I think one thing that's important for us to acknowledge, and I haven't done a study on this, but I would say informally speaking, for our lower income residents, they do not have internet service at their home. They don't have a computer at home, and their only way of accessing the internet and their email is through their cell phone. So they're using their cell phone to get their email. So this service is really critical because they don't have, there's no desktop, there's no laptop, there's no tablet at home where they're getting that internet access. They're going to the McDonald's where there's free internet and they're using their phone, or they're using it at their place of work. So this is a really critical way to connect with, I think, what's probably a majority of our lower income residents who don't have computer access or internet access at their home. Other questions?
And there,
Mike Kane?
Can you go back to the 311 submissions? This one here. I think if we had this information, we wouldn't have been near Zijon Waste Management to show how many people have called in on trash collection and other items. And I think the next time that we have waste management around, I'd like the information from staff to see how many complaints we have in like a 3-month time frame. Because I got those calls, I got the complaints, I got the emails, and that's why I said no. And if we'd have had that, maybe some of my fellow commissioners would have thought the same way I did. That's my comment.
And Commissioner, that's a very good point. We're working right now with Waste Management on issuing some licensing to them for our D365 licenses, which will basically help speed up the process and eliminate a lot of redundancy too. And I'm hoping that it's going to lower some of the issues that are out there by volume, just in calls and things of that nature, and especially at the commissioner's level. So for us, once we issue a license to, say, Waste Management staff, we go over as an agency and train their staff to know what these requests will look like. So they will go out and send to their operations crew a notification once they receive. We're going to filter everything that comes out of our system as well, just so they can view only what's supposed to be in waste management, make it real quick and secure. But it allows them to go out and basically look to see what that issue is instead of us sending a report at the end of the day. Because as you know, trash works till about 7 p.m. And then the next day, it refreshes in a week. We get a lot of those calls that, hey, here's what happened the day before. So if they can see in real time that we're issuing tickets into an area, or if we start to see trends where recycling is being missed in 103 as a whole for whatever reason, and that starts to pop up on the mapping that we're going to put behind it, they'll be able to get on that during that same day trash service and hopefully diminish some of these issues that keep coming in the following day and to your level. So once that's done, I think that's going to be a big improvement. Commissioner?
Yeah, one of the things, speaking of trash, and this happened in my neighborhood, they missed it a week ago Monday, so they waited till 6:45 a.m. the next day to come by and pick it up. Of course, I don't think it's 311 operable 24 hours.
We are not.
Okay, so they didn't call them, they called me. And I'm taking the trash out, and I'm like, holy moly, and my neighbors are having a fit. And if it's happening in my area, it's happening in everybody's area. And we have to get these people to perform the function that we pay them for. And that's not you guys' issue, it's staff's issue.
Well, and I agree too, Commissioner. I think to Joe's point there too, one of our 24/7, 365 pushes will be with the app. I mean, we're 8 to 5 downstairs, but the app itself, we'll be able to monitor and do some things there. Maybe we can get some real-time notifications if we can market that end to where the constituent knows that app will get straight to us regardless of what the hour of day.
And that would be perfect, because then they could feel like, hey,
somebody's there.
Nobody's there, they got my message. So when they get there, they'll have it.
Absolutely, and you can put things into your mobility or any other type of technology that gives you, that you can quantify. So if there's 10 people come in 10 minutes or 100 people come in the last half hour that you see a reoccurring issue, that automatically you put a protocol on some string that says, here, notify me, and it comes to my phone. Or if we're watching those things, we tend to stay pretty close to those, and we can get on the phone with who we need to and start to address that, because we've got direct contacts with Waste Management as an example for this to try to rectify that type of issue.
Yeah, so like Mike says, that, everybody's coming home after work and their trash is still sitting there, their recycling's still sitting there, and it's 6 o'clock at night. Well, I mean, who are they going to call? So this will be great, and so those numbers, as the 311 complaints come in about that, they will automatically be funneled to the trash collector, whoever that might be, and then they can act on it. And
yes,
we'll
I
have
agree.
to see what those actions are, because then they have to answer back.
Yes, well, and Commissioner, to that point, yes. What my push for Waste Management would be is when we go to train, we'll talk about these limits. We'll say once something starts to happen, if there's an area that's got 150 recycling bins still in it, and it's 7 o'clock at night, and we're starting to see people notify via the app that that's coming through, then it's going to be their responsibility to make sure that they're either out there picking it up still before, whatever time, or we got to figure out some type of protocol to make sure that gets to the constituent on how that's going to look, whether it's an automated push notification that is coming out. We're going to be back in your area by 7 a.m. Make sure you leave it out to do what you need to do, but to at least have a two-way communication that's informational on both ends so people know. The problem that we have today is people don't know what's going to happen. And with the intelligence and some of the things we can use behind us, it's just going to make things smarter. But we also need to automate that with good, sound business intelligence and processes that work for everybody at both ends.
So that means when you're training them, they'll understand their responsibility to say, yes, we picked that up, it's done.
Yep.
In that feedback.
And we'll also be able to track when they owe us a credit.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Johnson.
Thank you. What are the ways, just for those that are watching, that we're pushing this information to drive them to the mobile app? Are we the website, obviously, but what are other ways that we're driving them to the to download the mobile app and take advantage of its services?
So I would say that to date we've kind of been in what I call sort of soft launch mode, right? So we rolled out in October 311. We did tax payments in November. We wanted to hammer through some of those sort of initial feedback before we went sort of big with it. I think we're getting to the point now where we're comfortable that the the functionality is there, and the business process behind it for the Treasury team, for the 311 team, is not such that we're creating problems for ourselves by advertising it more broadly. So I think we're in a position now where we can begin to do that. So things like the citizen newsletter, things like rethinking the tax bill itself, and providing a simple, intuitive experience so that when people use it, they come back to it and they talk to their neighbors about it. So I think we're open to ideas and how we can increase the penetration of it. But we're kind of on the edge of that now, and Brett can talk about 311 side as well.
Yeah, and I think, thank you for asking that question, because I'm extremely excited about getting out there and marketing this thing. I want to say, though, the digital registration is a good example. So if we are able to say now we're fully functional with what we're going to intend to do over the next 9 months or a year in this app, and then start to look at trends and change it in the future. But we've got enough comfort to do that and market that. We will certainly do that. And I think digital registration is a great way to do that. And at that point in time, we can also look at those trends. So if we are now seeing, again, 105 waste bins on recycling still left in 66103, we get that information, people are typing that in. Why not put an automated notification that's set in a canned file somewhere that talks about what that process looks like, that goes right back once they enter that. So now we don't necessarily have to sit there and automate that or do that. It's already done. It's sitting there waiting for some type of click to make that adjustment in the automation side to where it goes right back out to the constituent. So it can say, typically, if you, as an example, have been missed, we, being waste management, will be out there before 7 a.m. because they're trying to get back on before their next day 7 o'clock starts, so they're not backing that day up as well. But the digital registration would be a great way to exemplify that.
I'm just thinking about statements and things of that nature, paper statements, or however they're receiving their statements. If they have it on there, that's another way of driving that at whatever point it's appropriate to do that. But
well, BPU could add it onto theirs.
Exactly.
Because most everybody has a utility bill.
Well, there are other localities, and Peg could speak to this, that are using this application for utility payments. So
right,
and you can imagine lots of different possibilities.
Well, I didn't mean that we had to make it for the utility company, but that would be lovely. I wouldn't argue with that.
Yeah, just wanted to make sure that was on. So I think, we have discussed traditional marketing methods of getting the word out, whether it's social media or, flyers or recordings on phone calls they may be calling after hours. And so I think we're excited to ramp that marketing. And I think, the other thing I would add is how impressed our team has been with the collaboration on your side in terms of getting all of these services together. And My WICO will be the service that has the most services within it that we host across the country. And so, we're really excited about that. And I think once we have more services, it will become more clear to users that you really are getting all in one, and the marketing will come clear with that as well.
Would you please tell the audience who you are?
Yes, I'm Jean Nobile. I'm the Director of Operations.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Anything else, Commissioners?
I'm excited. Yay.
Commissioner Bynum?
So I've been sitting here downloading the app on my new phone. Could never download it on the old phone, but I can now. And it talks about, let us save your documents for you, and you won't ever have to look up receipts and things like that anymore. So it just made me wonder, I'm driving my car and I get pulled over and the officer wants my license and registration. So would I be able to find those on here?
I'm glad you asked. So we have been working with the state to roll out the vehicle renewals. And as Alan noted, that's been live for a bit. We are currently working on a digital registration initiative that the state is partnered with us on. And so that is not fully baked and out in the wild yet. But similar to the way the vehicle renewals have come into my WICO, we'll be able to bring that functionality with it as well. And Vital Records is very soon on that front. So, yeah, we're excited.
That's great, because there's been times when I couldn't find it.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that. I'll have to talk to the police department, and ask them if they'll accept a digital image of my insurance.
Well, that is actually that's a use case that has a lot of functionality for municipal court, right? So when you think about getting your license reinstated and those sorts of things, you have to provide proof of insurance, and it today is use the word onerous and relatively expensive process. So that has lots of implications across the community. We can provide a way that it can validate that somebody actually has registration or has insurance, and that can bounce it against the state's registration or insurance database. You can provide a real-time confirmation of that. So there are sort of real-world, real-life applications of this kind of checking that can really improve people's quality of life.
Other questions from commissioners? I am a frequent user of 311 app for code violations, so a regular user, so I'm looking forward to the pin drop functionality, because when you report graffiti in particular, it's often not on a building, and so there's no address, so you end up saying it's on this one piece of concrete right before you get on the highway by such and such, so it'll be nice for all of us to have that functionality. Thanks so much to the team. This item was for information only, and it was our only item for this meeting, so we are adjourned.
Thank you.
You gonna tell them about me, Jane?